actuality, because I've told him now 3 times in writing, please do not include me in any more messages.
The only change on that agenda is the wording for the clerk center.
Yep. Elle told me today. You good? As soon as the clerk sits down, we'll get started.
Absolutely. But we need this to be,
I'd like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you'd please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We welcome our guests here this evening. We invite you to sign in on the back table. There are also copies of our agenda on the back table, along with listening devices if you require them. We'll proceed with a roll call. Members present this evening are Council Members Gearboss, CO, Rice, Lesh, Harmount, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and Mayor Marl. From City staff, we have Acting City Manager Treasurer Cole, Clerk Royal, Community Development Director Adkin, and I believe our IT Network Administrator Shonk. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
Move to approve as submitted.
Moved by Gearboss to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We'll proceed to the subsequent motion, which is an excuse of absences. There are no absences, so we'll proceed to the first of 2 public comment periods. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments on agenda items? I would defer then to the city clerk. Were there any written comments submitted in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? No, sir. Easy enough. Then we will proceed to the one and only presentation, which is a update on the budget from the Saline Area Fire Department. And I believe Chief Spurley is going to be taking the lead on this. I also want to note that I believe the Chief's PowerPoint presentation has been distributed along with some additional supplemental financial information. Is that correct? Very good. Chief, we appreciate your time this evening. You may begin when ready.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm going to go over a financial overview that kind of falls in with the 10-year strategic plan that has been presented to us by a strategic planning committee, a risk mitigation committee, the budget committee, and steering committee. So this isn't just my recommendation. This was a recommendation that came through our fire board members and appointed members, which all 4 municipalities had someone on those boards. So let's get started. Our financial overview. Our fiscal goals include modifying our funding model to ensure long-term stability of our department instead of the existing percentage model. We will capture funds based on taxable value. This change will promote overall growth and enhance our ability to plan for the future of the department. The estimated amount captured from transitioning to a taxable value model is projected to be 2.98 mils. This will enable us to successfully implement the recommended 10-year strategic plan. Some of our significant expenditure categories continue to include repair and maintenance of equipment and personal protective equipment. Our 10-year strategic plan enables us to effectively manage the replacement and maintenance of these essential items. The key assumptions underlying the budget projections for the next 10 years under the new funding model are as follows. A projected growth rate of 3% revenue, an operating cost increase of 3.5%, workforce growth rate at a 46.66%, and capital improvements to including land acquisition, Station 1 repairs, Station 2 build, and a revolving fleet replacement to support the overall 10-year strategic plan. Our vision and mission alignment. By aligning the strategic plan components with the mission, the department can ensure that its goals are met more efficiently. The renovation of Station 1, the addition of new stations, workforce growth, and the revolving fleet replacement are all essential to enhancing the department's capabilities in fire suppression, rescue, and prevention, ultimately leading to a safer community. The major initiatives include building 2 additional fire stations over the next 10 years. This initiative aims to achieve enhanced response times as the proximity to a fire station significantly affects the speed at which emergencies can be addressed. Increasing the number of firefighters to ensure the adequate staffing and improve response capabilities. This will also achieve the ability to meet the MyOSHA 2 in, 2 out standard, which has been cited as a safety concern by the SAFD Risk Mitigation Committee. It also helps get us closer to NFPA 1710. We'd like to implement advanced training programs to enhance the skills and preparedness of all personnel, ensuring we meet state regulations. Upon the fleet and equipment to maintain operational efficiency and ensure the highest level of safety and effectiveness in emergency response and mutual aid. Reduce risk by meeting industry standards to improve our insurance service office rating, which is ISO, which aids in increased safety for our staff while potentially lowering insurance costs. Our growth strategies include enhancing community engagement, focusing on recruitment and retention of firefighters, investing in advanced training and technology, actively participating in public safety initiatives, developing strong community partnerships, and continue to review and implement the 10-year strategic plan. This graph illustrates comparative data from surrounding communities validating that our budget requests and 10-year strategic plan are aligned with other departments in terms of service delivery, staffing levels, and station needs. During our risk mitigation and steering committee meetings, we identified several key risks across the board and departments, including capital investment plan, financial management, funding model, governance, operations and budget, policy and legal compliance, and a strategic plan. With the approval of this year's budget, we will now be positioned to address these risks head-on. This budget approval marks the first step in a 10-year strategic plan, enabling us to develop and implement corrective actions tailored to each identified risk. The risk mitigation, steering, and budget committees have unanimously agreed that a top priority must be to address and rectify the department's funding model. Postponing adequate funding will not alleviate existing conditions or the associated risks. Our ability to meet investment needs depends on transitioning our funding model to rely on taxable value. Without this change, we cannot accurately plan or fund the recommended 10-year plan. With that, we recommend the following cost control strategies: budget management, preventative maintenance, energy efficiencies, and we will continue to seek all grant opportunities. We will also initiate operational efficiency strategies such as process optimization, technology integration, training and development, resource management, and performance management. As we near the end of our presentation, let's discuss the key takeaways. With the approval of this budget and commitment to our 10-year plan, we will be better positioned to deliver our mission and will be able to demonstrate solidarity not only for our employees, but also our community. This budget reflects our unwavering dedication to the growth and career opportunities of our employees, ensuring they see our commitment to the professional development. Simultaneously, our community will recognize our steadfast commitment to providing the best possible service, staying attuned to the overwhelming needs. Together, we will build a stronger, more resilient organization and community. The adoption of this budget is critical as it addresses paramount safety concerns, including the 2 in, 2 out rule and compliance with NFPA 1710 standards, which we have not yet met. This budget marks the beginning of a comprehensive approach to resolving these issues, with long-term solutions taking root now. Each delay further exacerbates the challenge faced by the Saline Area Fire Department, including the associated risk. Maintaining the status quo or failing to invest in our fire department will not enhance services, rather it will lead to further deterioration of conditions. This is step one of a 10-year plan to both improve the functionality of the fire department, but also to set it up for financial stability. The community deserves a fully functional fire department today and years down the road. That plan starts with the adoption of this year's budget. So what does this really mean? Currently, MyOSHA requires 2 inside and 2 outside firefighters anytime they're in IDLH atmosphere, so anytime that they're on breathing air. This budget would allow us to meet the minimum OSHA standards. NFPA 1710 requires 15 firefighters on scene within 8 minutes. With mutual aid, we received 5 firefighters on scene at the 8-minute mark. And we will not achieve 15 members until around 16 minutes if none of the surrounding departments are on call. And that's very unlikely. With this budget, we are still behind industry staffing needs and best practice. However, this is a step closer to reaching those needs. The long-term funding solution will need to be changed. However, we still must have an operational budget during the long process of getting all municipalities on board with the change. Our risk mitigation, steering, and budget committees, who are made up of representatives of your municipality, have continued to rate the funding model, increasing the budget, and staffing needs as some of the top priorities. On behalf of the Saline Area Fire Department, Risk Mitigation, Steering, and Budget Committees, thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your presentation. We'll open it up for questions or comments from the dais. This evening I'll begin to my right and end to my left, and that's done intentionally because I'd like to start with Councilmember Lesh since he's our new liaison to the Fire Board. Mr. Lesh, are there any comments that you would like to make or any questions you would like to ask of the Chief?
You know, we've been over the budget many times between the Budget Committee meeting and with our last board meeting. I think it's been well talked about between the different municipalities and Saline. The recommendation going forward at this point is the budget as proposed. So as a member of the Fire Board, I'll go with that.
Thank you. Councilmember Seal, any comments or questions for the Chief? And I should note for the public's benefit that Council will consider this as an enumerated action item at our next regular Council meeting, which will be on March the 3rd. I'm sorry, Mr. Seal, please proceed if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one, Chief Spurley. First of all, thanks for coming. On your last page, or next to your last page, it says 2 inside and 2 outside firefighters anytime they are in an IDLH atmosphere. What does that acronym stand for? Sorry to be.
Inherently dangerous to life and property.
Very good, thank you. I knew it was something that made sense.
If you ask me again 100 more times, I'll know it, but right now I'm drawing a blank. Anytime that you're in an unsafe environment, that you have to have a respirator on.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So that also includes any time that, say, your city staff are in a confined space, you have to have 2 in, 2 out, and the fire department is responsible for that here in the cities.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, any questions or comments?
Sure. For the public's edification, I sat on the Fire Board for 10 plus years, and now I've transitioned off to make way for Mr. Lesh. I will say that, you know, budget is probably the most tenuous time for the fire department. It's difficult. We've got 4 municipalities as part of our fire department. They have very different needs. And so finding compromises and ways to move a budget ahead is a delicate dance. That being said, I mean, I think that there are ways in which that the fire board can work together to move that forward. What I want to understand is can you just explain what your current staffing levels are and what you want your staffing levels to be?
So the current staffing levels, we have 4 full-time a day. We drop down to 3 for allow somebody to be off for sick time, vacation time, etc. With this budget, we will be putting on 3 people, which will allow us to always maintain 4. So what that does is it makes us be able to, the OSHA standard of 2 in, 2 out, it allows us to always maintain that. In these committees, it was talked about, well, what if we just backfill with overtime? So we put together those numbers, I presented them, and the cost savings were very insignificant compared to just hiring the extra staff. And what it does is alleviates the burnout. So there's another department in Washington County, I won't name them tonight on record, but they get paid probably the most in the county, but their turnover is tremendous because the burnout of the staff constantly being mandated on overtime burns them out so quick. So for the little bit of savings that was presented, the boards said, no, just present this one, it's not even worth looking at the other one. So again, what this does is the MIOSHA 2 in, 2 out, that's basically the minimum MIOSHA standard. That's what we can achieve with this budget. As far as NFPA 1710, the study that you guys are paying for is going to talk a lot about 1710. So the quick sticker shot for you is, it says that within 15 minutes of a call, we should, or within 8 minutes of a call, we should have 15 firefighters on scene. So that's rough numbers without, pardon my math if it's wrong, but roughly 29 more firefighters is what that study should suggest. Are we going to get there today? No. But that's the sticker shock for you, is that NFPA 1710, which this study should go off of. I've talked to, I've been in talks with the people doing the study. Their quote was, you have a very bare bones fire department. Getting people to understand that has been a challenge. But with the 1710, what that does is it takes those numbers. So if you take the minute marks, right? Pittsfield can give us 2 if within that time frame. So take 2, we got to have 13 on a day.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Let's stop there for a quick second. So I'm going to back up to staffing. So currently you do have 4 firefighters on every shift. What you're trying to accommodate for is if one of those 4 are absent for a day so that you have somebody to fill in.
Correct.
So then theoretically you will now have 5 on every shift.
Correct. Today there's 3 people on shift.
Because somebody's off.
Somebody's off.
Okay.
Okay.
And then where do you stand with on-calls?
So we have 8 on call. It's a dying system across the board. People do not let people leave for work like they used to. I wish I could say that we would have, that you could still rely on it. The paid on call we have, they're aging. I don't think any of them will be upset with that. But people aren't working across the street that their boss lets you leave work to leave for an emergency. Those days are pretty much over. So small towns are still holding on to those. As you grow and as people age, that's starting to go away. The other problem, the other trend that you have is that the recruiting's getting hard. So to be blunt, what you end up doing is you end up becoming a training academy, and the good ones leave for career jobs, and you kind of get stuck with some of the bad ones. So paid on call is kind of a thing of the past, and people are struggling to maintain them. The state has increased training needs, and I started off as paid on call. If I had to do what I had to do, when I was 18, I wouldn't have had the time to do it, and keep another job. So the fire service has changed a lot, and it's not been very friendly to paid on call.
Okay. So do you have space at the current station to accommodate for another person? You do, okay.
There will be, if you look at the plan, next year there'd be a stopgap because we can't, I'm not coming back next year and asking for a 6 because really we don't have the room. This is to fix the immediate need. It's a big jump now, I'm aware of that. But then it kind of, until we can fix the funding model, which needs to be soon, we don't have room for more people. So we're kind of in that juggling, what can we need, or what can we get versus what we need.
Right. So I appreciate that. And so one of the things I do want to make sure that I mention is that when we're saying, you mentioned the risk mitigation, the steering, and the budget committee. The risk mitigation changed its name to the steering. It is not there are not 3 separate entities.
Well, there was a whole committee that just did steering committee. Those people are no longer there. The steering committee is not those that run the risk mitigation. The risk mitigation is no more.
Correct.
But they had recommendations. Now the steering committee is what's moving forward.
Okay. I will yield my time to others. I do have some other questions about the budget, but as we start getting into it a little bit, we can deal with that.
Very good. I'll go last. Councilmember Gearbaugh, do you have questions or comments for the chief?
Yeah, if you could kind of bring us up to speed, because our council doesn't necessarily know about the strategic plan, as much as the strategic plan hasn't really been presented, I don't believe, to the governing bodies. So not understanding what that means and what it could intend or could affect to our citizens, I think is one of the things that's kind of putting the cart before the horse.
Yep,
So if you could explain how that's going to be presented to us to understand.
So basically what we did was look at our overall needs. A lot of this was driven behind the risk mitigation findings, NFPA 1710, everything that I've presented here. What we continue to do every year is we put together a budget, and then we go through the budget item by item and find out where we can save money. Unfortunately, there's no long-term solutions for that. We don't have a budget per se that this is what the budget is and budget in. It's more like a begging every year. So to try to put long-term goals in there makes it hard. So I sat down with your former city manager, and she put a lot of work into this to come up with what stabilizes the department. I also talked to acting city manager Cole. She looked at it briefly and kind of said that, yeah, we're on the right page. So what this 10-year is it basically says we have our own, I'm hoping it's nothing that you haven't heard before, but our OPED liability, we have to, we have that out there. We have to keep up with wages. When I started, we were 26% behind the closest person in the county. So maintaining wages, equipment replacement. I believe our fleet has an average of 17 years old. So when I came and I said, well, where's the savings? If we haven't bought anything in years, where's the savings? Well, we don't have any. So aligning all these into actually putting money aside to say this is what we need for 10 years down the road. What that is the revolving fleet, maintaining proper wages and equipment. A big one that we had was I came in and there's a turnout gear expires at 10 years old. We were in year 9 when I started, and there was no plan on buying, turnout gear. So I'm looking at people that weren't fitted correctly for gear. They had ripped and torn turnout gear. So these are like the bare bone minimum safety things that weren't addressed. So this accounts for basically all the needs that we're going to need for the next 10 years to basically stabilize it. With that, looking at the Saline Area Fire Department's overall coverage, it's believed that we need at least 2 stations in the next 10 years to meet can't say meet, we still won't meet those goals, but to shrink those response times.
While our former city manager may have presented this budget, we still have not heard back from our fire assessment that we're doing, and I think there may be some recommendations or such that may want to approach what she presented differently. The other question I have is, you've named a number of concerns and issues that have been brought up, and I think we all as our council and the other ones have asked for those things to be addressed in our previous budgets for the last couple of years. So I'm hoping that at this point, we've got significant money going towards those safety issues and concerns, because I want to make sure that we don't have any OSHA or MIOSHA issues or concerns even with the existing facility that haven't been addressed. So I'm hoping this budget includes that.
It includes some, it does not include all of it.
I know it doesn't include all of it, but I want to make sure that the immediate things that need to be addressed are being addressed and that our firemen are safe.
Because as we talked about, part of the problem that we have is more of a, I joke, and I don't necessarily find it funny, but it's kind of like the Price is Right. How close can I ask without going over? You put it out there, and then, this is what we need. And then people go through line item by line item and critique, well, do you really need this? Don't you need this? We don't have a budget to work in. So
I mean, and I've been very verbal in what I've said is that the fire board has not presented what we believe we need to go forward. I think we're trying to address that even with this.
yes.
When I look at some of the numbers in here, and actually the numbers you're showing to comparables, the population, does the 25,000, I mean, I'm looking at the one document that says 22, but that's 2020. Does the numbers that are in here between the number of calls, but the number of service area, Does this include any expansion in the future of our service area, or are we just going to continue to only support what we have currently identified? There is no expansion planned in the strategic plan to take on all of York Township?
At this time, no. It is, in speaking, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but in speaking with, CPSM, I believe is the initials for the study, a lot of that came up. There could be expansion. We could, they do have some tax revenue areas that that there's not much calls for, but we got to fix what we have today before we go seeking to expand. But in talks with them, they asked, why aren't you trying to expand? Why aren't you going further? And my response was, well, we gotta get our four municipalities in line before we go seeking other people. But there are possible opportunities out there to expand.
And then one more question, if I may, Mayor. The one issue, of course, is understanding with the strategic plan, and I do know there were concerns from the fire board meeting, reading the articles in not MLive, but reading the articles that were in the Saline Post, that Lodi did not support this budget as is. Is there a reason why, or what the concern is from their perspective?
I don't want to talk on behalf of them, but knowing the person, it's not that they didn't want this, it's more that the end goal is the same, just getting there differently is the basis of it. And we knew that going into the meeting, that, they had a different thought, and I think it might align a little bit more with your thought of more equipment, less people. I think that's where you're at with it, and
I'm just trying to understand, I didn't know if there's additional approach that happened to this or whatever. And then, I guess lastly, I do say one other thing. City manager, can you, and not right now, but tell us exactly how much millage we currently contribute and what that will mean in terms of having to tax our citizens? And with that,
we have a 1.0 millage rate, which elicits about $640,000. A 2.98 millage rate would elicit about $1.9 million.
addition. All right, thank you.
So right now, to cover the millage rates, right now, if the Saline Area Fire Department operated under a millage rate, we would be about 1.73, I think is what I calculated it as. So if you put that out amongst, find me someone under 2, and we'll talk. If that's anything that can show you where we're at and what we're asking for, I don't know of a department out there that's under 2.
No, and I think the issue for us is making sure that we can properly notify our citizens who can vote on the millage to support this operation.
And that's what this budget takes our immediate needs, and what we're talking about the long term is we all know, everybody knows we have to fix the funding model. Where we get with those numbers, how we get there, that's the next step. Unfortunately, in the middle of those talks and conversations, we still have to have an operational budget today. So I would have loved to have been able to come to you going, hey, this is how we fix it. Unfortunately, the timing doesn't allow you to do that. So hopefully in the near future, we can present the rest of that and then figure out how we want to move forward with 4 municipalities.
Just for us, a $350,000 hit's a big number in 1 year.
Agreed.
So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Councilmember Rice, do you have any questions or comments for the chief?
No, I don't. My colleagues have covered my questions.
Very good. Councilmember Harmount?
Yeah, I'm not on the board, so excuse me for this question, but are there any areas of targeted efficiencies that we see opportunities with? So I know we're talking about increasing millage, and we're talking about adding 2 additional stations and making sure that our fire staff is safe with proper PPE and maintenance, but are there any areas where we maybe are lacking with our efficiencies that we could maybe target to be more efficient?
So the only one that really is significant is talk of a fire authorities came up. So for those that might not have been around for a while, I actually went and helped write a bill to change the law in the state of Michigan to allow us to become a fire authority. What was holding us back is we only do a part of York Township. And the law said that in order to become a fire authority, you have to have the word was total municipality. So the mayor and I both testified in Lansing. It was a 3-year-long process. Ultimately, it passed in November or December. So that law goes into effect 90 days from the end of session. So we're looking at sometime in March I don't have the exact date yet, but looking at March. So what's an authority mean, and why does it matter to your question? When you do grants, so I apply for every grant I know about, we apply for. The problem with grants is grants usually go out to cities, villages, townships, authorities. We don't fall under any of those categories. We're just another. So we've gotten grants. We just got an OSHA grant, but that's because it didn't leave it up to any of these things. So, but the most that are going out to municipalities are one of those categories. The feds, we applied for a USDA grant for a tanker. The feds pretty much told me, we see this as a handshake agreement. Even though we're legally binding, we're a legal government, organization, the feds kind of look at it as a handshake agreement. They basically said, well, you're an authority that hasn't finished the process. So after kind of talking through that with them and kind of arguing, no, we're right, that's how they see it. So we're missing out on grant opportunities. While we can get some, it's much harder to get grants when we're not an authority. The problem with the authority is that not everybody is on the same page with the authority. Not all 4 municipalities are on the same page. It could be an easy process, it could be a hard process. At the end of the day, regardless of how we decide to fund the department, we can still become an authority opposite of the funding model. So the authority, everyone goes right to the funding model, because that allows us to go for a fire-wide millage, bonds, things like that. Well, if we put all that aside, and at the end of the day, the municipalities still get to follow the same rules. They still get to create the rules of this. But at the end of the day, if we say, no, the authority still can't for a millage, we still should go for the authority simply to make us, in the eyes of the grants and loans and bonds, finish that so that we qualify for those.
What are the next steps?
The next steps would be to get all 4 municipalities on the same page. Sounds easy, but I think it's gonna, we all gotta, I think it's doable if we don't get caught up in the weeds over the little things in the articles of incorporation, but 4 municipalities, ultimately there's 22 politicians, I believe, plus you have, deputy supervisors and treasurers and clerks that are not elected, so I'm really looking at having to sell it to about 30 people and having them all on the same page, so that's the real struggle of it.
Are there other areas that you do have control over that would be efficiencies that you would want to target?
I don't think so. It's really just the funding model always goes to the top because every year, the fire department pretty much runs pretty steady throughout the year. And then we get to this time of the year where all of a sudden it's the budget. And all of a sudden emotions get high, people get upset, people start to question the fire department. That's because, again, we're coming and asking for money. So, if I ask you for $100 today, hey, I need $100 2 years from now, you're probably not going to ask a whole lot of questions and you're probably going to be okay with it. But if every year I go, hey, I need $1, now I need $2, now I need $3, the end goal is the same. But it sounds like I'm coming and asking for more every year. That's the way that our budget is set up. So fixing that funding model to where we actually have a budget to work with instead of asking for a raise every year, that's the biggest efficiency that we need to fix. So that we can work within there and then we can actually allocate what needs to go where and, build the savings account, actually build for the future. Does that answer it?
Okay.
Any additional questions, Councilmember Harmo? Thank you. Chief Spurley, let me read you something that appeared in the Saline Post, and I'll preface. I don't start from the premise that the written word is always true. So perhaps you can give me clarification and some context on this. You're paraphrased here. Chief Spurley said that all the committees developing the budget, which included members representing the city of Saline, settled on presenting the lowest cost alternative. Is that accurate?
I don't recall that. I was not I was never questioned.
You're being paraphrased in the
Yeah,
article.
I was never interviewed by.
The writer of that story?
Correct.
Okay. Did the Budget Committee consider multiple alternatives, and was the proposal that was ultimately recommended and voted upon by the full fire board, was that the lowest cost alternative?
So the fire board doesn't get presented with options. In my time here, we've never presented to the fire board options. We have presented at the budget committee, we have decided what options we want to go with.
I think that's my question. Did the Budget Committee have several options that they considered?
Going in, yes.
Okay.
Going in, we talked, like what we talked about tonight, and a lot of this, there's some interweavings between the steering committee and the budget committee, because short of your one rep, it was the same committee. So if you replace, Ms. O'Toole with Mr. Lesh, it was the exact same committee. So going into that, the overtime versus hiring, that was a consideration. But when it got put out in the budget committee, it was hey, this is what we need. This is what we need to address. And it was to be, hey, let's go through as one, we're all gonna go unified and come in as a team. That's why I said at the time we knew Lodi, they weren't necessarily on board with it, but they were still in agreement that we are going to agree with this body and move forward.
Let me come at it from a slightly different angle then. So the Budget Committee consider, debate, or were they presented with numbers or proposals that were greater than what we're considering this evening?
Greater than no.
No, okay. A request for the acting city manager. One data point, and I could gather this information, but perhaps it could be confirmed by your office or a subordinate in the treasurer's office. I would be interested, and I think council would benefit from seeing the growth in our portion of the fire budget over the past 5 years. Again, we're not going to consider a formal action item until the 3rd, so I don't need that information imminently, but sometime in the next week or so. And then, Chief, I would assume if my colleagues here have additional questions or concerns, you'll make yourself available to them between now and March the 3rd?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will say, I will put this out there. She's not here tonight. She had something to be, but Lori Champion is your rep. She's worked on all of these committees and stuff, and I know a lot of you trust her. I will continue to say this is not my budget. This is the budget that was presented by the steering committees, the budget committee. So if you guys have trust in her, by all means, please reach out to her as well, so that you have a different viewpoint.
I'll actually, I was planning to connect with her probably tomorrow, Wednesday, and I'm hoping that she'll provide a message or a narrative to the fire board providing some context on these issues, because you're absolutely right. She's invested a significant amount of time and energy over the past couple of years assisting your department. I think she's done a phenomenal job, and of course she'll be a stout advocate for the city and our interest, while also being mindful of what the fire department's needs are in the ensuing years as your board rep. Before we transition to the consent agenda, are there any final questions for the chief? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. Chief, one of the questions I have is that when we start talking about 1710, how many communities in our area are able to meet those criterias and those thresholds?
I don't have that answer for you. Again, it would come back to we're not going to get there.
Right.
This budget doesn't get us anywhere close to that. So I will never go on record saying that we're okay being under NFPA standards. So, and I don't think anyone here would do that. But what I can say is, the MIOSHA 2 in, 2 out standards, we can meet that with this budget. So it all depends on what risk you want to take with your community and what the safety is.
Okay.
But this budget doesn't get us anywhere near NFPA numbers.
So, so then if we sort of take that off the table, one of the things that I've talked about for a long time is we have a very expansive service area, and that's part of the issue that we have. We have like far corners of different municipalities. Should the fire department be reevaluating that and looking at more of a regionalization, partnering with other agencies? Right now, York is, half of it comes to the Saline Fire Department, half of it goes to Milan. You know, is there ways in which we should be looking at that for other communities? Should we be partnering with bigger departments like a Pittsfield or an Ann Arbor to get those numbers and stuff? Because, I mean, we can keep trying to grow, but I don't see that this community is going to be able to keep up with the growth that the department's going to need to keep up with the growth of these communities and the expansion of them. I mean, the city of Saline is looking of growing to the west. You've got Lodi that's got growth. You've got York that's got growth. Saline Township has even got, you know, growth. It's gone more from agricultural down to residential. So is it something that we should really be kind of changing our, you know, our direction and what we're looking at and going more to a regionalization model?
So it's actually opposite of that in a way. Right now, we are a regional fire department. In my opinion, the city needs to look at, you need to play better in the sandbox with the townships because they're the ones that are funding you, okay? So like we're running 60-some% of the calls in the city, but you're only paying 34% of the budget. So if you look at it, you know, you do have the regional, you know, you have your neighboring municipalities paying to have a fire station in your jurisdiction. So you have the region. And when you look at Pittsfield, you know, that's been brought up a couple of times, and that's where it came from. They don't have anything to benefit. Why would they want to take on our department and our problems? You have to have something to benefit, and that doesn't really benefit us other than 2 more people. So when you start looking at, you know, talk to SIO, they can't cover their own municipality right now, so everyone's fighting for funding, and we're all behind. Unfortunately, Southeast Michigan, we've gotten way lax and way behind it when it comes to public safety. So we should be the golden child for this regionalization, but unfortunately, we've let things go so bad, and you know, the 4 municipalities don't get along, so we can't really expand. There are opportunities out there, but any growth, any taking over, you know, taking over York Township would be one of the easiest things to do for us. But then you get into, you know, the neighboring fire department, it's gonna say, you know, if they're watching this, I'm already the enemy because I just brought it up. So there is a lot of back and forth that would be had, but ultimately it could be done. But we gotta have our stuff together before we go looking, you know, for people that want to pair with us or to expand. But ultimately, you got to look at, you know, everything you're getting a quarter of. Right? So we are sharing everything, and the city's getting more bang for their buck.
The city does pay the highest percentage. Let's just clarify that. Thank you very much.
The city also, well, we can talk about that too in the future because, you know, there's a 2% difference between Saline and Lodi. But if we keep playing those numbers, it goes back to, I need these boards to look at what you just said about regionalization. We can't say we want to be part of a region and then say, well, what about me? We get this, we get that. If you want to be part of a region, it's one, right? So the Saline Area Fire Department, and that's where regions fail, and that's where we're going to fail. What you just asked, can we go further? Yeah, we can, but not if people continue to say, we do this, we do that, we do that. It has to be one unified front. Some people are going to get a bigger advantage, other people don't. But there's a 2% difference right now between Lodi and Saline City. In the next few years, the townships are going to pay more than the city. And when they come back, and it might be 10 years from now, but when they come back, is the tune of the city going to change? So I caution people that even the study could backfire on the city because the townships could very well say, wait a minute, why are we paying so much? Why are we only paying 2% less, yet all the calls are in the city? So when you look at the region, we have to be careful and understand that it needs to be a unified approach to make this work.
Mr. Sue, did you have a final question?
Yes, I do. Thanks. Chief, do you know, are there savings like in homeowners insurance or anything like that if we're better able to meet these standards?
So yes. So ISO is the number. Let me preface by ISO is insurance standards. They change the numbers yearly. They're very close to the chest. They don't like to tell us what their ratings are for. Okay, so it's very hard to get them to let their secrets out, even though I'm sitting there saying, well, let us know so we can improve it. Their answer, more stations, more people. That's pretty much all they'll tell me, right? We dig in, we know more. For example, we added 3 people a few years ago. The ISO comes out every 5 years. We maintained the same score and we added 3 full-time people. So if we wouldn't have added, we would have went backwards, staying. So if everything stays status quo, we're always gonna get a worse rating. So that will affect your scores. And then other things are proximity to fire stations. One of our biggest things is a training facility. We lose a lot of credit when it comes to training because they want you to have a 3-story, in order to get full credit, 3-story training facility with a live burn area. So.
Are we able to use Ann Arbor's?
We are. It's difficult to get all of our staff over there and the amount of people to borrow someone else's things, and that's more of a technical rescue trainer than it is a live fire, and it's not 3 stories.
Okay, well, my main purpose in asking the first question, though, was to say that might be a selling point for people who have a hard time buying into, why should we support this whole idea? Why should we support going forward with an authority? Why should we support going forward with a different approach to budget?
So there are efficiencies there that, I don't know if everyone knows that, but we have a county technical rescue team, we have a county hazmat team. We train together, we work together, we get training through, a lot of our training comes through our Washington Area Mutual Aid Association. So the county is working together to save as much money as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Seo. Chief, I'm sorry, Councilman Rice?
Yeah, I really need you to follow up on your comment of all the calls are coming from the city. Can you give us a realistic percentage of what calls are within the city?
That are
fire versus medical.
So you got to look at it that, I don't have that right now, no. But if you look at calls for the city, I think out of roughly 2,000, I think 1,600 were in the city. So
I would like to see that actual number if you could at some point, simply because hyperbolic statements like that make the headlines. So a realistic statement so that.
I didn't say all.
You did say all.
Okay, so
you said all. Just so the
majority.
edification of the community, because the community would, deserves to actually see that breakdown. That would be really helpful.
Thank you. Chief, we appreciate your time. I do want to say I took a slight issue with great respect to the comment about the 4 participating municipalities not getting along. I actually think we get along quite well. I think we have, on occasion, serious philosophical differences, and that's why you have legislative bodies to debate those differences. I think there are some who want to promulgate this narrative that there's a lot of disagreement or dislike between the municipalities.
I will apologize for that statement. Obviously up here, getting questions
sure.
thrown, I don't get to prepare for them, so it's off cuff. So yes, I will. I think that we can get along well. I think we're in a really good spot moving forward. But it is a challenge. I don't want to say not getting along, but it's a challenge to get any 4 municipalities to get a consensus. Yep.
I just want to be clear that as it relates to fire services or any other regional potential municipal partnerships, I think I speak for my colleagues, both elected and appointed, that if there are other governmental jurisdictions who will extend a hand of cooperation and will do it in a good faith manner and be open and honest, we will extend that hand back. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Anything you'd like to add before we transition to the substance of our agenda tonight? Not that this item wasn't substantive, but we're taking some action on a variety of additional items.
Just I know that over the years, there's this time of year comes and it's not fun for me or any of us, but know that we are working, to try to stabilize the fire department and get the needs. And we are aware that these are big numbers and they are big asks. Unfortunately, we have to start somewhere. So we are very much aware of it. Just know that we are trying to do everything we can to, be conscious of the increase in the budget, but also moving forward.
Very good. Thank you, and if council members have additional questions, please direct those to the chief or acting city manager in the next 3 weeks. We will act on this issue on March the 3rd, and either between the chief and the acting city manager, I think there's a couple additional data points that were requested tonight that will be disseminated to the group as soon as possible. Chief, appreciate your time. Appreciate those members of the department who also were in attendance here this evening. We are going to transition to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Move as submitted.
Moved by CO to approve as submitted. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Harmount. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as submitted signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 25-30, establishing a city manager hiring committee. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memorandum from Mayor Marl and to approve or not to approve the hiring committee as recommended.
To acknowledge and approve.
Moved by Lesh to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Gearbaugh. Thank you all. The memo pretty much speaks for itself. I think we've assembled a very talented, well-rounded group of staff, council members, and private citizens. Between now and our next regular council meeting on March the 3rd, that group will be evaluating proposals for an independent consultant to assist with a comprehensive nationwide search, and we will be making a recommendation to this body at our next regular meeting on March the 3rd, which means this group, if approved tonight, will likely be meeting either later this week or next. And between myself and the other council members who will be serving on this committee, we will certainly keep you abreast to the progress and forward momentum we're making in terms of developing a community profile, finessing the job description, outlining key priorities, and then disseminating that publicly for distribution. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Just one real quick. Knowing that it's a large group, is it just the goal to make sure that just a quorum is available when they do all this? My concerns is that when you have 8 people, trying to get everybody scheduled for all the interviews and everything else. So
Yes.
just clarify.
And we did make, when people were approached about serving on this group, the strongest possible emphasis was made on making themselves available later this spring for in-person interviews when we are actually evaluating finalists for the position.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep. Any additional comments or questions? Any discussion or debate on the motion? It's been properly moved by Lesh, seconded by Gearbaugh to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 25-31, ordinance number 872, an ordinance to amend department head titles. This will be a motion to acknowledge the memorandum from Community Development Director Adkin and to adopt or not to adopt ordinance number 872.
Move to acknowledge.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, simply to acknowledge, seconded by Gearbaugh. Mr. Adkins, you have a number of items on the agenda tonight. Most of them are sort of house cleaning items, but for the public's benefit and for council's edification, if you would like to make a brief statement regarding ordinance number 872.
Yes, this ordinance is to update the title from city superintendent, which is no longer a title or position within the city since 2019. The previous city superintendent was an engineer and acted upon a lot of these duties and responsibilities as an engineer. So just for clarification, throughout the general code, anything where stated superintendent was shifted to city engineer and or director DPW, and then there was just some other housekeeping items that we ran across in there for clarification.
Very good. Can you remind me, Director Adkin, ordinance number 872, 873, and 874, these did or did not go to the policy committee for review?
They did.
They did, okay.
December 16th, I believe.
All 3 items did go to policy?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Lesh, as the chair of the policy committee, is there any statement that you'd like to make at this time?
No, they were all very cut and dried, really. I mean, we took a look at the red line copies, and it was very evident that it was just a housekeeping kind of for pretty much all 3 of them.
Very good. And when we get to additional questions or comments, if council members Rice or Mayor Pro Tem Dillon have additional statements that they'd like to provide in their capacity as members of the policy committee, we'd welcome that. I'll open it up for questions for Director Adkin. Mr. Gearbaugh, I'll start with you.
As I've read through this, I have a couple, well, general concerns, and I've mentioned these to the acting city manager. When we look at the city engineering, shifting this from a city superintendent and giving the title city engineering, there are some duties and responsibilities under Division 7, Section 2-1.151 that, because of the way the city has been structured in the past and the way it's going, I do not believe that this properly assigns the responsibility and care for aspects of our operations to the proper director that should be handling these. Especially an example that I give, it says, in conjunction with the Department of Public Works, The city engineer or authorized designee shall be responsible for the care, maintenance, and operation of the streets, water, and sewer system, walks, alleys, and cemeteries, including the handling of delinquent water accounts, and shall be responsible for the maintenance of fire apparatus, should we have, and fire hydrants, but not for the operation of the fire department. That extends a lot of authority to the city engineer if we're identifying the city engineer as being our actual city engineer. For me, those responsibilities belong with the DPW director. So I would, and there's some other additional, even under purchasing recommendations, I think there's some separation of duties and expectations that are no longer under what was in place likely 40 to 50 years ago as we started to reorganize our city and reassigning development aspects. So for me, I think this needs to go back to the drawing board to correct those issues.
Mr. Gearba, obviously we can make the ordinance stronger, better, but we should all be inclined to do so. And this is more rhetorical, were there other sections of the ordinance that you thought benefited from some additional language or modification of the?
Similar to those modifications, there's also, we're using city superintendent, we're using city manager, we're using city administrator. I think there's a couple areas. It's like, which is the correct title to be corresponding with our existing charter to make sure that those correctly correlate those.
Can I be so bold and ask you maybe in the next week to, in bullet point form, send those concerns, suggestions to the acting city manager and the community development director, and maybe if the group is amenable to this, we can revisit the ordinance in modified form at our next regular meeting on March the 3rd.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this to a date certain to be
Just for
reviewed.
clarification, if I may, I did look up city administrator, and section 2.73 under division 2 in the city charter, it states city administrator shall also be known as and referred to as city manager.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. I appreciate what Mr. Gearba has brought forward. I know that we did talk about this quite a bit, and it was sort of, you couldn't do like an automatic find and replace of every place there was superintendent, change it to engineer, because that was sort of actually the starting point. And then we quickly realized, wow, there's some things that don't kind of make the grade there. I think what we tried to do was go in and say, we are looking for a point of contact, an initial point of contact for someone. And I think that's where it sort of fell upon the engineer. But what we did put in was, or authorized designee. And so I think that's where we were trying to go with this, was get it, okay, so it's under the umbrella of engineering, who then is going to have its own set of rules to designate out about cemeteries or whatever the case may be to a different department. I don't know, maybe we thought that was the easier way to do it. Maybe the way in which you're viewing it, it's making it more convoluted. And so having another conversation may not be a bad idea. Sometimes when you live with it a little longer, you get used to the wording. And so I do think that that might be the thing. You've definitely brought some very valid points about understanding, are we putting too much under the one umbrella of the city engineer in that position? But I do think that we did take a lot of time to go through it. That being said, I mean, there's always opportunities to look at something from a different lens and understand that. So I would be completely amenable to postponing it, taking it back for further review. In whatever case we do, I would highly recommend that this, if we do move forward, that this is only a first reading and that it's not up for adoption.
Okay, very good. Are there any additional questions, comments for, in particular, staff? Director Aiken? All right, then let's vote on the motion to simply acknowledge the receipt. It's been moved by Dillon, seconded by Gearba to acknowledge the memorandum. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. What's your pleasure? Would you like to adopt, not to adopt, or postpone to a date certain?
I'll move to postpone to, let's see, is that enough time to review, March 3rd? Yes, to March 3rd.
Will that work for Mr. Aiken's schedule?
We'll have to go back in front of the policy policy subcommittee.
Here'd be my take. I would rely on your sound judgment. So if there were modifications that could be made and then disseminated electronically to the group to have them sign off, if you think that's the correct approach, then I would be working off the assumption that March 3rd would work. If you think it would be more beneficial to reconvene the group to have a discussion and then make a recommendation, I would probably punt it to the subsequent meeting.
No, I can just send out emails and do it.
Okay, is the policy committee comfortable with that? Ms. Rice, Ms. Dillon, Mr. Lesh? Okay, so Mr. Gearba, my apologies, deferring back to you. So postpone to a date certain of March 3rd for 2025 for consideration? Okay, seconded by Rice. Clerk Royal, you clear with the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor of the motion to postpone signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 25-32, ordinance number 873, an ordinance to amend 94-96, discharge of unpolluted water. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memorandum from Community Development Director Aitken and to adopt or not to adopt ordinance number 873, amending sections 94 through 96 of Division 4, Article 2 of Chapter 94 of the City of Saline Code of Ordinances to allow citizens to install dry wells or alternative systems for discharge of unpolluted water collected from foundational drain systems.
Move to acknowledge.
Okay, I got Mr. Gearboff first, Mr. CEO, simply to acknowledge. Would you be amenable to seconding that? Sure. Okay. Again, Director Aikens, I would welcome public comments for the, or welcome a comment for you for the public's benefit.
Yeah, this ordinance currently only addresses commercial and industrial, mostly industrial, and the unpolluted water going straight into the storm system. Right now, the way the ordinance is set up, if residents want to discharge water from their sump pump or drainage tiles into the city storm system, if there is a catch basin in front of their property, they can tap into that. Otherwise, they're left to their own devices, and generally it's surface discharge, which may or may not disrupt the neighbors, depending on the amount of water flow. So what this allows now is a pre-manufactured dry well to be installed in their yard. There's setback requirements and distances from the foundation, or if they put it in the front yard, it has to be set up in a way that it can be retrofitted, that if a street project comes through and a storm system is put in, they can tap into it directly right into the main as opposed to the catch basin. So this came to the forefront because over the past year or so, they've been getting 1 to 2 requests a month from residents to put these dry well systems in. And between our department and engineering, we weren't really sure how to address it, and there came a circle of confusion. So we decided that to offer this alternative solution to the residents is probably the best way.
Very good. Mr. Lesh, as the chair of the policy committee, any statement you'd like to make regarding this proposed ordinance change?
Would completely good to me. I mean, a lot of engineering kind of speak in it, but that's exactly what the residents need. So.
Very good. Are there questions for Director Aiken? Mr. Gearbaugh?
I do have one, I think it's one grammatical correction or a number on section 5 of, let me remember where it was. Section 5 of, well, section D, and basically it says something about sump pump discharge on private property. And it indicates that then 5 feet from the foundation wall, but not closer than, it lines out, it says 5, but then in parentheses it says 45 feet from the lot line. I'm not sure which it is. Is it 5 or is it 45?
Red line.
Yeah, it'd be on page 3 of 3, page 83 of the agenda, or page 3 of the red line proposal.
It's actually supposed to say 20 feet.
Okay.
So it says not closer than 4/5, 45 feet from the lot line, and I'm like,
Oh, the 4 actually has a
Has a line.
must it? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't see it on this one.
Closer to
Thanks.
5 feet.
Anything else, Mr. Gearbaugh?
When we have it at the beginning, I see where you've moved the non-conforming use to the very beginning of the ordinance. How does this trigger for someone in this situation where, say they already, is it if they decide to disconnect and then do something different? Because I'm thinking a couple of examples I've known, these homes were pre-1960 when they were built. So their issue is they either change something in order to discharge or run it on their ground. When does it apply? I guess that's my question.
They can run it on the ground now if they'd like. You can't knowingly discharge water into a neighboring property, but if they want to switch to something like this, or if there's a manhole cover, they can go, or not manhole, structure in front of them, they can go into that.
So there isn't going to be a requirement that you have to have a dry well or it has to go into a sanitary?
No.
Unless the water runs off of your property?
If the water runs off the property, then yes, we'll be notified and we'll recommend this, or they have to tap into the storm system.
I guess my concern is where some of these, as you mentioned, they're pre-existing, when would this trigger? Because I know one of the issues has always been, will we ever require disconnect from sanitaries to storm sewers? And
Oh, from sanitary, I'm sorry.
yeah, because we've had issue, I mean, I know of a number of places where the sanitaries are connected to the storm.
Yes.
And at what point, if we ever did that, I just want to make sure that none of this would trigger, if I decide to remodel my home,
Yes.
and I have that, and I have to dig the basement or something, and I have to change my drainage ditches or whatever, are we going to require them to reconfigure it and put in a
At
dry
that
catch
point, I would highly recommend that they change it out because, one, based on the cost of the project and, the overall scope, and two, to eliminate that nonconformity going into the sanitary.
So those would be made up, that example would be given to the engineering department. The engineering department would determine which is benefit. I mean, is it a cost-benefit approach where you could either tie it to the existing storm, or you could have the option of a dry well?
It'd be a cost benefit to the resident, yes.
So they get to make that decision.
Correct, yes.
All right.
But to eliminate that, it would, first, it'd come to our department through building plans.
Okay. Planning really hadn't seen this, and I'm just kind of going at that because I know the couple incidences that we talked about where I think individuals actually have and just recently run their stormwater from their home onto the sidewalk or into the curb and gutter. And I'm hoping that this will be the requirement going forward.
For new builds?
Right, existing builds, when people
Existing
change it.
buildings, yeah, we can, if it becomes an issue,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbaugh. Mr. Seo, I believe you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Atkin, does this count as a situation like in our neighborhood where I have a footing pump sump that drains out onto what is actually common ground for the entire neighborhood into a drainage swale, which then goes down to a holding area, but it's all above ground?
If that was approved in the overall plan, then it's accepted, yes.
All right, thank you.
That you're still discharging the stormwater into an appropriate and approved
Okay,
basin.
thank you.
Additional questions? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. This was another one that the policy committee spent a lot of time on, and we are fortunate that the deputy engineer came in and showed us some drawings to help us sort of visualize what was actually being done here. Just so I have a clear understanding that I understood it correctly and that the public is going to understand it. So anytime a dry well is put in, it has to have a fitting so that it can be connected, should the connection be available to it?
Only if they place it in the front yard,
Okay,
yes. Otherwise, they can place it in the rear yard if their side yard's large enough.
okay.
And this is only for sump pumps, this isn't for downspouts, so the amount of water that's going to be discharged into these dry wells should be minimal.
Thank you very much.
Please, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Can you clarify, you said it does not include downspouts?
The downspouts are prohibited from being discharged into dry wells.
So it's just only the footing drains?
Footing drains.
Okay,
sump pumps.
just want to clarify that. And then the last one we're reading about, should it become a nuisance, we'll have a process in place to address that, and because I know that's going to make the expensive option quite required. Okay.
Yes. At that point, between that or going back to your first question about it being discharged on the sidewalks, at that point, it'll be a violation.
Thank you.
If there's no additional questions for staff, we'll entertain the motion moved by Gearboss, seconded by Seal, simply to acknowledge receipt of the memorandum. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to adopt or not to adopt ordinance number 873?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved by Lesh to adopt and seconded by Seal. Is there any additional discussion on the motion or debate? There is none. Then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of adopting say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 25-33, ordinance number 874, an ordinance to repeal section 16.7 of Article 6, Apex A of the City of Saline zoning ordinance. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memorandum from Community Development Director Aitken and to adopt or not to adopt ordinance number 874.
Move to acknowledge and adopt.
Thank you, Mr. Lesh. Is there a second? Seconded again by Seal. This one's pretty cut and dry. Mr. Aitkins, do you care to make a comment for the public record?
Yeah, this was adopted back in 2018-2019 to prohibit these establishments, and then in spring, summer of '21, council adopted amendments to permit these uses, and this was never repealed at that time. So it's another housekeeping item, just for clarification, that they are permitted as a special land use now.
Very good. Mr. Lesh, as the chair of the policy committee, anything you'd like to add?
This was the easiest of the three.
Okay. Questions or comments from the dais? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just quick clarification, considering it's still legal at the federal level, this is no issue with us reversing this because of the state laws and state requirements, correct?
No, with this law, it's, I can't remember the acronym, there's so many of them now, but this is the one that allowed each community to prohibit or permit. So
I just want to make sure, just understanding from you, that it refers back to, and there is no federal
no federal, there's still nothing that's going to.
oversight. Okay, thanks.
Any additional comments or discussion? Then we'll proceed to vote. We have a motion on the floor moved by Lesh, seconded by Seal to acknowledge and to adopt ordinance number 874. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. We'll transition now to reports and announcements and updates from boards, committees, commissions, and task forces. Mr. Lesh, again, I'm going to start with you. Start to my right and then to my left. So do you have any updates or reports you'd like to share at this time?
Well, we had the fire board meeting. I think we've gotten the gist of that by the chief in here today, so nothing else at this time.
Very good. Councilmember Seal?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. The Saline Lindenberg Sister City group has organized a trip this summer with the city of Saline Lindenberg coming here with 26 members of their community. And as part of that, we're going to have a number of different trips, 3-day trips, gone for just a single day, and then a 4-day trip, which is taken down into the state of Ohio through Hocking Hills, down up through back up through Amish country, and then spending a day at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The general public is invited to join any of those trips if they would like. There's a fee associated with the trips. Each one individually has a different fee. So if you're at all interested in accompanying any of us on any of those trips, you're more than welcome. Please notify either myself or Jim Roth, the 2 members of the Sister City Board that are handling that, and we'd be happy to accommodate you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Seal. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, any reports or announcements or updates from boards, committees, or commissions?
No, as we met last week, there's nothing new to report.
Okay, I have 2, not related to boards or commissions, but other pertinent updates. One is they're anticipating currently some significant snow Wednesday evening into Thursday morning. And I just wanted to remind folks that, one, we have a phenomenal crew at DPW who's doing an outstanding job keeping our roads plowed and salted. But each of us can play a part in supporting their efforts. And so when they anticipate large quantities of snow or ice, if you'd be so kind and courteous to move your car into a driveway or nearby parking lot and off of public streets, that would be appreciated. And please note that the city does reserve the right at times of significant weather to declare a snow or weather emergency, and there thereby, on occasion, very rare occasion, of course, ticket and remove vehicles from the street that are a public nuisance. So we don't want to do that. So just please do your part and help our DPW crews out. We want to ensure that our streets and major roads are salted, plowed, and are accessible for all motorists. In addition to that, I wanted to share, and most of my colleagues are aware of this, but Saline Area Chamber of Commerce is hosting quarterly luncheons again in 2025, similar to what they did in 2024. The first quarter will feature updates from local elected leaders, which include representatives from Bridgewater Township, Lodi Township, York Township, Pittsfield Township. Mr. Hammond, I believe you're going to be representing Saline Township at that event. And myself, that's open to the public on Friday, the 21st. It starts at 11:30 at 400 West Russell Street, which is the old hospital building. You do need to RSVP through the Saline Area Chamber of Commerce, and information can be found online. But if you're interested in knowing what's going on in any of the local communities that make up the broader Saline community, we welcome you to attend that luncheon. Subsequent luncheons will feature federal representatives, specifically Congresswoman Dingell, county representation, and then I think we'll end the year with an update from our state representative Morgan Foreman and state senator Jeff Irwin, respectively. I will turn it over to Mr. Gearbaugh.
Thank you. A couple things to bring up, and I forgot to mention at our last meeting. I've had the opportunity to work with the CPSM group that's evaluating the fire department and so forth, and looking forward to their response, but I believe they have a couple more meetings to meet with some other township officials and other individuals, so trying to make sure that they reach out to everyone that can participate and be able to work towards this review. Two things coming up with the Planning Commission. Maple Road, the former house that's on Maple Road that's across from the former UAW building, will be evaluated, I think, for the preliminary and final, Chris? That's right.
It's a combined site.
Yeah. And then the other one, we're going to be having a discussion regarding the potential special use of a placement of a church in a commercial district, and that will be on the agenda this Wednesday. And then lastly, just kind of talk about the hiring committee for the treasurer. We successfully interviewed 3 candidates and came back with a recommendation from the group, did all our background checking and everything, and at this point, Acting Manager Cole has extended, and we have an individual that accepted, and I believe started today. And could you highlight that?
Yes, Sarah Finch has been selected as our new city treasurer. She's actually starting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
Wonderful. And then just kind of bring you up to date, the transition team has been working on a number of items, and especially helping our acting manager address some open positions and being able to address the needs through some temporary hires and realignment of jobs and duties, and hopefully that'll help alleviate some of our recent departures.
Very good. Councilmember Rice, any updates, reports from boards and commissions?
No updates for me, but I would thank you for leading into a question that I had, Mr. Gearbaugh. If council could get periodic updates from the transition team, either verbal, like you just did, or by email, obviously, holding back on any
And we mentioned
private
doing
info.
that. We actually just talked about that last week, that we'll need to do this for y'all because we want to keep you all informed.
Yeah, that would be great. Now that we're officially in the transition, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, partly it's coming through the city acting manager's
Yeah.
memo. She pretty much handled it, but if there's anything you would like us specifically addressed, let me know.
Yeah, I'll think about it from the council perspective, and I will say that the acting city manager's communications on Fridays to council have been really, really helpful during this time. Very thorough, and I feel up to date just from the council perspective. Maybe there are some things that we could. I'll think about them and then we could address them.
Yep.
No additional updates from me. All my committees meet soon.
Very good. Councilmember Harmount.
The Historic District Commission, normally meeting this Thursday, will not be meeting. We don't have any new business to come before the Historic District Commission, so.
Very good. If there are no additional reports or announcements, we will transition to the second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make a comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required to state their name for the record. Are there any citizen comments? I would defer to the city clerk. Were there any written comments provided in advance of tonight's meeting in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? Easy enough. Then we will transition to a closed session, or a motion to convene into closed session, rather. This will be a motion to convene into closed session 1 pursuant to MCL 15.268H to consider an attorney-client privilege communication, and 2 MCL 15.268D to consider the purchase or lease of real property. And this would be a motion to convene at 8:19. Moved by Gearba. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. The clerk will please call the roll.
Councilmember Gearba?
Yes.
Councilmember Seal?
Yes.
Councilmember Rice?
Yes.
Councilmember Lesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Harmount?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Yes.
Mayor Morrow?
Yes, we are convening into closed session at 8:20. I forgot, Nicole, there's another thing. I don't have the motion.
I know, it's gone.
Okay, here, hold on.
You got one? Oh, thank you very much.
That was on the original one. I don't know if that's what we're still going with, but
Yeah, I think, yep.
that's,
Yep. Yes, I need a motion to return into regular session. That's moved by Gearba at 8:52. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by CO. I'll get you on the next one, Councilmember Harmon. The clerk will please call the roll.
Councilmember Gearba?
Yes.
Councilmember CO?
Yes.
Councilmember Rice?
Yes.
Councilmember Lesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Harmount?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
yes.
Mayor Marl?
Yes, we are reconvened into regular session. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion, this would be agenda item 25-35, to approve a letter of agreement, an LOA, between the City of Saline and a Technical Professional and Office Workers Association, TPOM, regarding a medical disability retirement. This will be a motion to approve the letter of agreement with TPOM regarding a medical disability retirements, ensuring equitable treatment of employee who qualifies for full medical disability retirement under MERS. Move to approve by Gearba. You want to second that, Mr. CO? Do that. Okay. Are there any additional comments? Do you care to make a brief obligatory comment for the record?
She is intentionally being fair in allowing the LOA to be considered and approved this evening.
Very good. Is there any additional discussion or debate on the motion? We have a motion on the floor, then moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. Is there any additional business to come before Saline City Council this evening? Then the chair would be very happy to entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:54. So moved. Moved by Lesh. Is there a second? Seconded by Harmount. All those in favor of adjourning say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.